and these authoritarian rulers just clamp down on their people, and just like they did in Iran with our Green Revolution, where the authoritarian regimes just continue to crack down on the people. And if you get a chance, come out on September 16th for support of Iranian woman Mahsa Amini that died last year, and the woman rights in Iran. So maybe I can get you to come out to a demonstration on that. Something to consider. But next we have Jose. Jose is from Electronic Frontier Foundation. Jose is going to be closing it out for us tonight, and then we move to Q&A. Jose is a community activist that's been with EFF for some time, and we're part of Electronic Frontier Alliance, where we share ideas and ask for feedback, and they're always supported at EFF with our events. So thank you, Jose, for being a part of it.
Hi, Vahid. So, hi, my name's Jose, and it's really late where I am, so I'm going to stick to my dry prepared remarks and leave the sex jokes to the professionals. So I'm on the activism team here at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. We're a public interest law firm that fights for digital rights in the courts, in public and private policy, and on the streets. We also chair the Electronic Frontier Alliance, which Ethics and Tech is a member of, as Vahid mentioned. And I'll be speaking mostly on behalf of myself, not my organization, but on some of the issues that we at EFF are paying attention to right now in this space. So today I want to focus in on two topics of concern to my colleagues and myself. As some of you may remember from a previous Ethics and Tech event, I had the rare experience of being a US-born citizen who got to experience war from the other side, whether I liked it or not. As an 8-year-old child, we visited my mom's family in Panama during the months after the initial invasion in 1989, 1990 of Panama, which was an unconscionable, illegal, and barbaric act the US engaged against the people of Panama to show other countries in the region at the time that the empire still had a mighty wrath after its defeat in Vietnam. As anyone who's seen any of the documentaries about the US invasion of Panama may recall, the US used the invasion an incredibly imbalanced aggression against a country where the US already had 16 military bases, in part as a field for military experimentation with weapons that had never seen the scale of active combat before. As the United States continues to pursue several wars around the globe, then, these once again are not places the US is attempting to stabilize, but one benefit for the empire is continued testing grounds for new weapon systems. In so many cases, the pitch is easy as the military, like local police departments, is happy enough to contract and use barely tested technology from private firms in the field with little to no oversight. The sample I'll point to today is, of course, what we've been talking about a little bit earlier, the use of algorithmic systems to increasingly take the humanity out of war. Just as aerial bombardments allowed soldiers to fly too far above villages to see civilian faces before they were bombed, and drones have allowed soldiers to do so remotely as if in a video game, algorithms are increasingly used by the United States and other powers to take the humanity out of aerial murder altogether. Algorithms are basically, and it's kind of like a frightening term that's very mystifying, but it's basically sets of rules for a series of instructions done by computers in a sequence. So it's not that much more complex than that. It's not that much more complex than a non-player character in a video game. It's inputted by people, right? So these algorithms, though, they're increasingly being used to make decisions that can decide who lives or who dies or whose life is ruined. Police agencies and capitalists increasingly use them against the working class that they manage in our neighborhoods and our workplaces. And then there's, of course, increasing evidence of their use by the US military and a lot of other militaries, but in the US military through Project Maven and other avenues. Algorithms help unmanned warcraft fly uneven terrains, engage in so-called defensive fire, and help the US military to treat subject populations much the same as police departments do with preventative policing. In Pakistan, the United States is said to have used them to predict who may or may not be, or has the likelihood of becoming what the US calls a terrorist. For example, through the NSA Skynet leaks covered by The Intercept and Ars Technica already 7 years ago. Checkpoints and aerial sensors can scan the faces of thousands of unwitting local residents, as has happened in Palestine by Israel and Pakistan by the United States, adding them to databases for predictive algorithms to determine their fate. As is so often the case, we only know of these types of things thanks to whistleblowers and leakers, the descendants of the late Daniel Ellsberg, of Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, Jeremy Hammond, and so many others. Through public records requests and efforts to gain contracts, we know that algorithms increasingly help track individuals from camera to camera on towers or drones and between them. And through investigative journalism and on-the-ground reports, we have major press willing to report on unverified reports, like the use of an autonomous drone strike in Libya in 2021. So-called AI systems really just beefed up algorithms. They're not actually artificial intelligence yet, thank God, are increasingly used as data analysts to find weapons and, as I mentioned, those deemed enemies of the Pentagon. Humans, in this case, ones who see the interests of empire and corporations over other people, program these instructions into computers. This isn't the Terminator taking over its operating system and coming to kill us. It's people who don't value the lives of others playing death squad with metadata. Humans often working for imperial powers are the ones who write or aggregate the inputs that go into the computers. And it is the inhumanity of the programmers and their power structure, not the inhumanity of the computers themselves, to blame. The other topic I'd like to touch on is the lives of people like the Panamanians in my family, some of whom seek to flee the destabilization wrought by imperial systems. Here in the United States, we talk a lot about the militarization of law enforcement agencies through Pentagon programs to distribute military-grade tech, national trends and militarized policing strategies, and the culture of the police forces themselves. But this form of bringing the empire home has always been a problem, to be clear. At EFF, one of our recent initiatives has been to better understand and have a better understanding of how to fight the increasing digitization and militarization of the US-Mexico border. When we say militarization, much of this is direct. Much as the Pentagon distributes excess military equipment to police departments, the federal government has helped put military equipment into the hands of the Customs and Border Patrol while swelling its ranks. Earlier this year, we documented the proliferation of surveillance towers and balloons along the US-Mexico border. For example, we visited a series of tethered aerostat radar system blimps, some of which had been hand-me-downs from the US military to the Customs and Border Protection. In one such case in southern Texas that I was physically there to see, we saw that the land from which the aerostat blimp was based had changed hands in a matter of a few years from the US Air Force to the CBP. Same blimp, same surveillance, same land, same subject populations, new owner. Military-grade vehicles handed down to the CBP have nothing to do with the few sections of the border where there may be armed threats. In many cases, they're in places where there are no crossings, there are no smugglers, they're just toys. If there is a border, the CBP wants the agents and the military surveillance toys to control it, whether against migrants or against the vibrant communities that live there. Similarly, the state of Texas in particular has created paramilitary bodies through Operation Lone Star as an explicit attempt to militarize the border against unarmed migrants at the state level, using, in some cases, federal military technology. In a horrible way, this all makes a lot of sense, because most migrants at the southern border come from the very nations that the US economically, clandestinely, and militarily has sought to destabilize or push into war, including Venezuelans, Haitians, Central Americans, and at certain points, Ukrainians, though different federal policies treat these nationalities and these complexions in very different ways. So to close out my remarks for EFF's part, we hope to support any communities along the border where there are avenues to push back against these federal and state efforts to militarize the border. For example, in many places, it's the county level law enforcement agencies and city and municipal law enforcement agencies that can determine whether they want to get, in the case of Texas, state-based military aid, and in the case of the entire border, federal military aid. And in some cases, pushback on the sheriff's departments, for example, in Arizona, can actually reduce the surveillance and military equipment in their communities right on the border. So as I close out, that's some of the thing that we can do at EFF, but really for all of our parts, the peace movements of the world can help push back against wars, which people will always be able to repel, no matter how scary the technology it is that it's using against us.
Thank you so much, Jose. I am a huge fan of EFF and support you guys in all the endeavors that you take on. I'm a huge fan of Roots Action. Now we're going to move to the Q&A section of our presentation.